Amy Carmichael, a missionary to India who labored there for 50 years, once said, "We all profess to be strangers and pilgrims in search of a land we can call our own, and then settle in the most unstranger-like fashion exactly as if we were at home and intended to stay as long as we could." She also said, "For prayers that ask that I may be sheltered from winds that beat on thee, from fearing when I should aspire, from faltering when I should climb higher, from silken self, O Captain, free thy soldier who may follow thee, from subtle love, softenings, from easy choices, weakenings. Not thus our spirits fortified, not this way went the crucified. For all that dims thy Calvary, O Lamb of God, deliver me. Give me the love that shows the way, the faith that nothing would dismay, the hope no disappointments tire, and a passion that will burn on fire. Let me not sink to be a clod. Make me thy fuel, flame of God." Now, the reason for that is I want to continue on the thought process I had on a previous segment called opting in or opting out. But when we look at the choosers in this world, the excusers in this world, the abusers in this world, and the viewers in this world, today I want to talk a little bit about excusers. When we opt into life, sometimes we opt in with excuses. And the opt-in excuses are usually built along the narrative of, if only. If only I had the right amount of education, if only. If only I had a different set of parents, if only. If only my rivalry was not internal or external, but I was taught to compete and complete in a way that was wholesome, if only. If only, if only, if only. If only basically leaves you with that exhausted position on Hesitation Hill, wondering the age-old questioning, coulda, woulda, shoulda. I could have done more with my life. I would have done more with my life. I should have done more with my life. If only. It's not fair. The second excuse that is proverbial is, if only I had something else. Here we're talking about someone else's time, someone else's talent, someone else's treasure. But 7.85 billion people on planet Earth are given one uniqueness. They are unique. In all of God's creation, there is only one of each one of us. So we cannot ascribe to someone else's talent. We cannot ask for someone else's ability. We cannot hope for someone else's prosperity. We cannot look for someone else's intellect. We are by ourselves divine and wholly made in the image of God. That's why Amy Carmichael said, "For prayers that ask that I may be sheltered from winds that beat on thee, from fearing when I should aspire, from faltering when I should climb higher." See, when you opt into life, you have to opt in with the desire and the decision that the destiny you're going to choose for yourself is something unique in time and space because you were made wonderfully and fearfully in the image of a living God. Now, granted, many people who watch these videos of mine do not subscribe to the same faith. The statement I'm making to you, my friends, is not a theological statement. It is a sociological statement and an anthropological statement. Since the beginning of time, man has rivaled with other men. Men have always fought with other men. Some had more, some had less. But Dr. Martin Luther King said God has given everybody some amount of talent. He's given some more than others, but not left anyone without any. When you look at the talent you've been given, ask yourself, why is the talent that was given to you by a created God, by a creator God, for a created man, somehow falling short when you're trying to opt into life? And I think it has to deal with excuses. I've written a bunch of books, or at least in my lifetime, for someone like me to have written 5 is considered a bunch, and I'm working on the 6th one. But in these bunch of books I've written, one thing I figured out is the easiest thing to write. Anytime I want to write about man's ability to make an excuse to opt out, it's like that list is a mile long and an inch thick. I don't have to draw on a reservoir of some kind of deep intellect to find the excuses in my life. It's almost as if they are ready for instant recall. In fact, if I posed you a question and you paused this video right now and asked yourself the question, what is the good you have in you that are great abilities that can allow you to make a monumental difference? Many of us would struggle to find those things that truly define us. But if I were to ask you, what are the things that came in your way as obstacles that debilitated your ability to have progress, our list would populate so quickly it will make our heads spin. That's because we look at our yesterdays, and Mr. Ziegler always said, you can let your past beat you, or you can let it choose. You can let your past beat you, or you can let it teach you. Not choose you, teach you. Obviously, we're talking about choices. But what can your past teach you? What can your past teach you in such a profound way that when you opt in, you will stop making those excuses? I vividly remember a story one time that my dad used to tell me. And my dad used to tell me the story of how one time when he was negotiating an event, when he was the CEO of a company, and he was negotiating a labor dispute within the organization that he was heading. And there was a broad strike outside. People were creating what was called a peaceful riot or peaceful protest, whatever the nomenclature is. But they had their tent set out outside, and every time my dad's car came in, they blocked the car for a period of time and chanted a little bit. The gates were open and he walked into the factory. And from his window in that factory, in that air-conditioned office, he could see the workers who were working for him in that sweltering heat, protesting the demands. Now, my dad had a choice. He had to be responsible to the shareholders and the stakeholders who had given him the position of prominence. He also had a responsibility to the people who were working to make it possible. Results rule, but people matter. I had the privilege of writing a book with the former president of Microsoft called Hard-Headed, Soft-Hearted. Hard-Headed, Soft-Hearted. The results rule, but people matter. You have to have a hard head. You have to have results, but soft-hearted people should matter. And my dad says one day when he looked out of that, he says, I have to make a choice. I can no longer make excuses. My excuse is not that I'm the CEO. My excuse is not going to be that somehow we have more and they have less. I've been given a responsibility and I'm going to fulfill that responsibility. But I have a responsibility to both people. I have a responsibility to those that hired me, and I have a responsibility to those that depend on me for their leadership. So he moved his desk and his telephone into a tent that was erected next to the union leader's tent. He said, this way, when they need to reach me, they don't need to wait for the time when I either arrive or depart. I'm here 24/7. But I'm going to conduct the work I've been hired to do from this tent. He says that image suddenly allowed the negotiations to go smoother, because what he did was he crossed the line of comfort and started embracing the line of effectiveness. In what you choose, when you opt in, when you make excuses, you stay on your line. When you choose to opt in, you cross that line. The difference is one puts you on the side of being a spectator, the other allows you to confidently be a participator. Until next time, opt in. Don't make excuses.